don't care. Leaders realize something that many of us should realize. The audience is bullshit. I think what you're going to find is that maybe a substitute for the word maturity is caring. Like you have to care enough about your parents to have that feeling. When you walk in, you said you're able to read the room better than most people. You have to care what people think before you're able to read the room. If you don't care what other people think, you would never even think to read the room. What does it matter what other people think? I'm the important person in the room. So that's probably a big part of maturity I think you're going to find. It's the ability to care about other people as well as yourself. Not in lieu of, but as well as yourself. Yeah.
I feel like what you were trying to say is when you said like the more powerful and original mind is like being creative. And so like I don't know for other people, but a lot of people have told me that I'm creative and I like to be alone. And sometimes it just feels like when you're alone you get to like experience more things, you get to do things like you wouldn't do with other people. And it's just like you do that because you want to have like a sense of individuality, and so you don't want to be like with other people and hear what they have to say because you just want to feel what you feel. And so it's just like people who have like these powerful minds tend to be alone because they don't want to lose that sense of like being original and having like all their thoughts taken away by other people and what they think.
Or even influenced by. Yeah. Now think about that. It's kind of, we can build on top of the statement about where you want to go eat. Imagine if you said, we're going to Popeyes, and they're like, I don't want to go there. Where do you want to go? McDonald's. Okay, well, enjoy it. I'm going to Popeyes. That's an individual. The person, of course, they can get butthurt, or else they can go, oh yeah, that sounds good, yeah, because I'd rather have McDonald's. If you can both kind of go your separate ways, and maybe walk back halfway and meet on Highland somewhere, maybe that, we'll meet at the bus stop in front of whatever. Maybe you can do that. But otherwise, understand what that means. If you say, well, I want Popeyes, and they say, well, I want McDonald's, you go, well, okay, we'll go to McDonald's. That means you're compromising something that you want. And that's not always a terrible thing, but you can start to see where, in order to belong to that pairing, in that case, you have to compromise some of who you are, some of what you want. In order to belong to a larger group, you're going to have to compromise more of who you are and what you want, because now there's more people whose interests are going to be, combating. And as a creative person and as an artist, that's one thing you probably really don't want to do, compromise. Because when you compromise your vision, you're compromising yourself because your vision's coming through yourself. And so yeah, you're going to find that very creative people have to have that solitude. You also have to have the time to create, to be by yourself. Because if you're not by yourself, you're never going to have deep thoughts in 20-second sound bites. And in order to create something, that means you're going to have some deep thoughts, some deep ideas. So, I'll say more about that. Yeah. That's actually a really important thing to keep in mind. Leaders don't care. Leaders realize something that many of us should realize. The audience is bullshit. Do you know what I mean by that? I've talked to you about spaghetti sauce, haven't I?
No.
I never talked to you about spaghetti sauce.
No.
That's terrible. I should have done that. Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that the stronger your mind is, the more you can handle being by yourself, and that you want to rely on other people as much.
Mm-hmm.
So, the stronger your mind, you can form your own opinion without having others telling you to change it. And you can handle being by yourself. So you're fine with others not agreeing with you.
Yeah, and I want to kind of caution us a little bit, because if you're somebody who's a follower, please don't take from that that's somehow a terrible thing. Most people are followers, and it makes sense. Imagine if all of us in this room right here were completely powerful, independent, original thinkers. What would we ever get done in this class? What would we already get done? But imagine how much less we would get done if all of our 35 minds and intentions were going in 35 different directions. Imagine trying to run a society or establish a culture where every single person has their own ideas about how things should be done, and they only pursue their own ideas. You'd have no cohesion. So you have to have people who are following. In fact, no society is going to function unless you have most of the people who are doing that. And that's not a terrible thing. Like, for example, why do so many people like buffalo wings? Because they're tasty. That's why. Anybody here not like buffalo wings? Not even one of you doesn't like them. Okay. You're all a bunch of followers, aren't you? No, it's just sometimes stuff is really good, and so we agree on it. And we might disagree about whether we should have, extra spicy or just regular spicy. We can disagree about some of the nuances of it. But unless we can agree on the major parts, our civilization is never going to hold together. And that's true about buffalo wings or about political systems. We have to have that cohesion. That's how we get things done. We don't get things done without that. But, having said that, you also do have to have that original thinker once in a while who shows up and says, hey, how about this? And what should we do with that original thinker? We should probably kill them, right? Because they're trying to change too many things. And then after we kill them, we can start thinking about it and go, you know what, maybe they were onto something. Maybe we should follow what they were doing. Because that's the only sensible thing to do with our martyrs, right? Make them real martyrs. And that's because, as I said before, the audience is bullshit. And here's what I mean by that. If you're starting a band, let's say, what you should be doing is making music that you like. And that's it. Because if you like music, say if you like the music that you're making, guess what? Other people are probably going to like it as well. Why? Because you're not that original. Meaning that if you create something and you're like, this is really good, lots of people probably share that same musical taste. And I mean, there's 7 billion people on the planet. You've only got to sell 1 million records to go platinum. So that's not a lot of people you got to sell to. And you're probably going to come across people who have the same taste as you. This is why you see things like McDonald's. Why there's so many of them, because so many of us have that same taste. But here's the thing. The audience doesn't know what it wants. The audience doesn't know what it wants. So if I come in here and I ask you guys, what makes a good teacher? Some of the things that we would say, well, they're different from the things that we actually believe. Like I hear this sometimes when people ask them, like those students will say that so-and-so is a very good teacher. I go, what do you mean by that? Are they a good teacher? Well, they're funny. Okay, so Dave Chappelle's a good teacher. He's funny as hell. By the way, yes, he is a good teacher. But okay, so maybe we can check that part off. They're nice. Are they really that nice, though? No, we don't really know what it is. There's just something that makes us feel like we like being somewhere, and so if we like being somewhere, then they're probably a good teacher. I'm sure you guys have heard of ragu spaghetti sauce?
No.
Yeah, if you haven't, you should. I'm going to screw this up, because they're the #1 spaghetti sauce in the world. If you go down to any supermarket and look in the spaghetti sauce aisle, you're going to see a whole bunch of ragu spaghetti sauces. I'm going to mess up some of the details of the story, but it goes something like this. Back in the 80s, I think it was, early 80s, mid-80s, ragu controlled something like 70% of all the spaghetti sauce sold in the United States. That's a massive percent. When you're looking at like Starbucks, they don't control that much of the market. It means ragu just dominated the market on spaghetti sauce. So there was a small company called Prego, which is, you guys have probably heard of Prego. They came along and they were trying to compete with ragu. So they hired a guy, a chemist, to come along and make like the perfect spaghetti sauce. And so he did what most of us would do. He got people together who like spaghetti sauce, and asked them, what do you want in your spaghetti sauce? What do you want it to taste like? They would give him feedback, and then he would go back to his lab and he would make the spaghetti sauces that people said they wanted. And then he'd have these taste tests, and guess who would win? Ragu. Ragu would beat him. Did it again. Ragu beat him. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 67 different times he went to panels and tried to perfect the exact spaghetti sauce that people wanted. People kept choosing ragu. So he finally said, screw it. And he went the complete opposite way. If any of you have ever had Prego spaghetti sauce before, it's like salsa. There's some marinara sauce in there, I guess, but it's like a whole bunch of like chopped up onions and vegetables, and it's all thrown into a jar. And then he did a taste test with that against ragu, and guess what? It won. People preferred the Prego over the ragu. It was the complete opposite of what people said that they wanted. When you ask them, do you want this? Yeah, what kind of spaghetti sauce do you want? They tell you. You give them the opposite, and they seem to like it. Why? Because the audience doesn't know what it wants. Because the audience is generally not original creative thinkers. What they're probably going to repeat back to you is, Here's what I'm supposed to want. And so, like, for example, when you ask people who like coffee, what kind of coffee do you like? What do you want your coffee to taste like? I want it to be, bold, rich flavors. Do you want like milky sugar water? Oh, no, that's gross. I want like a dark roast with a bold flavor. But then Starbucks sells billions of dollars of coffee every year. Why? Because the audience is bullshit. The audience doesn't know what it wants. So you can only go so far when you ask people what it is that they want. A lot of times, you just have to present it to people and give it to people. And then people will try it, and they're going to realize that they like it. It never would occur to people that they like it before they try it, because they've never tried it before. They have no concept of what it's actually like. And this is why you have certain entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was not an engineer. He wasn't a computer programmer. He was a salesperson. That's what he excelled at. He didn't even come up with the designs for the iPhone stuff. We think he did, because he was the face of Apple. He was a brilliant brilliant organizer for the most part. He could get people together in teams, and he was able to administer teams. He was great at that, but he wasn't an engineer. But that guy did something that makes absolutely no sense. He sold private computers, personal computers to people. Imagine the first personal computer. What would you use it for? Nothing, because there's no software that's been developed for it yet. Because companies won't make software for a computer because no one has a computer. And of course, no one's going to buy a computer because there's no software for it. So what he did was he invented the market. He created, you could use it for this, you could use it for that. You couldn't really use it for much. But once people started buying them, because people were buying them, they didn't know why, because as you know, the audience is bullshit. So people just bought the computers up, and then all of a sudden, programmers came along and said, people are buying these things. That means that we could sell software to people who own these things. And that's how the personal computer market took off. It wasn't a big clamoring from people. We want personal computers. They didn't even know they existed. They didn't know what they'd even use them for. It takes a powerful original mind to come along and say, here's what this is, here's how you could use it, and to convince you to try it. The guy who invented the Prego sauce, it wasn't because he was a great chemist. It was because he was frustrated and fed up. And he gave up, and he had contempt for, screw it. Here's a bunch of onions and bell peppers. Throw that in there and see how they like it. They love it. They what? Did the complete opposite of what they wanted? Yeah, that's what they liked. Yeah. And so you have to keep that in mind. The audience is bullshit. So if you're pursuing what the audience wants, you're probably not going to be particularly successful. Especially if it's something in like art, creativity. If you're an artist and you're trying to create something that you think the audience is going to like, yeah, probably not. Probably not. But if you create something that you like, and then you put it in front of people, people will be turned on by it. Wow, that's pretty cool. How'd you come up with that? Yeah. So the more powerful the original mind, though, it has to incline towards the religion of solitude. It has to be doing its own thing. It has to be doing its own thing. You have to be making spaghetti sauce on your own. You can't be doing what everybody else is doing. And otherwise, of course, it's not original. You have to be away from influence. You can't have too many people around you giving you a whole bunch of feedback because the audience is bullshit. You should have a couple people who can give you feedback, honest feedback, people you trust, of course. But not a whole bunch of people. You also have to be in solitude because you have to work. You can't work when you have a bunch of people around you who are constantly distracting you. It can't happen. You can't write a book 10 seconds at a time, 15 seconds at a time, with constant interruptions. You have to be away from everybody else. And so you have to be alone with your thoughts. You have to be alone with your work. And you have to be alone away from influence. Big things. It's interesting, by the way, the words he uses here, incline. To incline means to go up. So he's talking about a powerful mind, it inclines. In other words, the idea is that the religion of solitude is something that's up here, like it's something to be cherished, to worship. And he even uses the word religion there. So people will follow it the same way they follow religions. And some of you, maybe some of you are introverts, like extreme introverts, and you follow solitude like it's a religion. Like some people go to church on Sundays, you go by yourself every day. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Moral of the story? The audience is bullshit.